The next trial was published earlier this year. It's probably the biggest randomized clinical trial done in vasculitis at over 700 patients. It's called Pexivas. And they were looking at whether plasma exchange was helpful to treat GPA and MPA, but they also were looking at a second question: can we give patients less steroids and still have them do well? So let's take the first question. What is plasma exchange? Some of you have maybe experienced it. This is a machine that does plasma exchange. And essentially what it does is we put catheters in your veins and we draw out the blood, and your blood goes through this machine where it essentially is cleaned or washed and then given back to you. And we hopefully, in doing this, we're removing factors in the blood that are causing problems. There was a previous study that showed that plasma exchange was very effective for patients with GPA or MPA, and we would often do this when things were very critical and very serious. This study definitively looked at whether or not this is a good idea, because it is an invasive and expensive procedure. And what they found is that plasma exchange was not effective in terms of improving kidney function or reducing the rate of death. And so I think this is going to make us really rethink whether we should be doing plasma exchange in all comers, and particularly maybe there are still small subsets in which it would potentially be indicated. But for the most part, this study showed that plasma exchange was not that effective of a therapy. It's important for us to learn both what works and what doesn't work. But the second part of the study I think is really intriguing and interesting to patients. And that is, they took some patients and they gave them the traditional amount of prednisone or steroids. And then they took another group and randomly gave them less steroids and got them off of steroids faster. And what they noticed is that the patients who got less steroids did just as well as the patients that got the usual typical amounts of steroids. And in some cases, they did better because they had less infections and less adverse events. So this is a really important first step for us as a community to begin to understand how we could potentially get away with giving patients less prednisone, which I know is something that would be extremely important to all patients. Really, this trial is a testament to the fact that the community is so strong, we're able to conduct these international studies involving hundreds of patients with complicated procedures and still produce really good, sound results.